How would you recover from the trauma of hitting a cyclist at night with your vehicle? You don't know with certainty, but you feel certain you may have killed this person. You stop your vehicle, get out. During that period of time when you're walking back to the cyclist, a truck comes and runs over that cyclist. You're in more stress because by now there's no doubt it's a matter of how are we going to clean this up. Let's listen and learn how Jacques overcame the trauma of this tragedy and made a major life change. Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who is helping me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Jacques Delorme, who talks to us about a traumatic experience in his life where he hit a bicyclist at night, and in an attempt to work with him, help him survive, another truck hit him and almost mangled his body, and he tried to live with this experience for several days until he was told it's likely the cyclist was suicidal, which then activated some thoughts in Jacques' mind. He too had been suicidal in some cases, and he made the decision to reverse what was happening in his life through neuro-linguistic programming. Marty, it's a great testimony to Jacques, what he went through, how he overcame the post-traumatic syndrome. He did not want to end up in the same condition of the bicyclist that he was hoping to survive. Marty, what are some takeaways we can learn from Jacques?
As Jacques was explaining to us his story, I'm a visionary. As he was going through that, visualize the accident, the fact that he was trying to help this guy, the truck came, ran over the cyclist, and everything he was going through, I could sense that. You could sense his pain. And then when he was going through how to get over this and go through what ifs and what if I had not gone down that road or not left home, and how he went through that as you explained to us what he did. And then his freedom. You can sense the joy in his heart, his voice, his life, that he's free from all of the guilt, the shame, what ifs.
Are you going through any kind of trauma recovery, or do you know someone within your circle of influence? Let's listen and learn together. It is a great life testimony. Jacques, it is great to have you with us. By your testimony, you are recovered from, or maybe still periodically are remembering a bicycle accident in which the rider was killed. And I'm guessing you may have gone through some form of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And our listeners are curious if you did or possibly are still recovering from PTSD, just how you did that or are doing that. We may have some listeners going through something very similar to what you have had happen in life. Great to have you, Jacques.
Hey, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Jacques, can you give our listeners just a brief overview of what the incident was and just a little bit of what your reaction was to it, and then, of course, how you recovered or maybe are still recovering from?
The accident itself happened back in October of 2022, so it's a little over 2.5 years ago. It's post-COVID, which comes into play a little bit, and I'm driving on a major highway in Saskatchewan going into Manitoba, so I'm in Canada. So it's 120 kilometers an hour as I was driving. So by American speeds, you go miles per hour. It's about 75 miles an hour. It's a dual lane highway, so it's a higher speed highway that we have in the country here. It's after dark. It's 8 o'clock at night in Manitoba time, and I'm needing to get some food. So I pulled to the left-hand lane because I'm going to pull over to a gas station that's all by itself, no town, just a gas station all on its own. And I'm pulling over to get something to eat. Lights are on, but there's nobody walking around and there's no cars. Back in the just post-COVID era, everything shuts down at 7 o'clock in Saskatchewan, and this is 8 o'clock in Manitoba time. So I'm thinking, I don't know if this place is open. So I think, nope, probably not. So I keep going. The highway at that point curves slightly right and goes downhill. And I never saw him in time. A 24-year-old man was riding a pedal bike in the middle of my lane. And I had no chance to react. I'm not going 120 kilometers an hour. I hit him center of my car. His body comes up, comes over the hood, smashes into my windshield, bounces up and over and lands somewhere in the highway behind me. I used the left-hand side of the highway through my driver's side window to figure out where I am so I could stop because my windshield's destroyed. I can't see anything. So I use the side of the highway. I pull over, hit my flashing lights, and I call 911. I talked to her briefly. We figure out I am unhurt. There's nothing wrong with me. The airbags didn't even go off because his body wasn't heavy enough. You have to slow a vehicle quite a bit to get the airbags to go off. Mine, nothing. The airbags were fine. So we're thinking, okay, now what? So I have my emergency first aid. So I suggested that why don't I go back, at least try to do something. I don't know if he's alive. I hit him pretty hard, but he could still be alive. And I could at least do something from a medical standpoint until the ambulance arrives. So I walk back, it's about 75 meters or so. And I find him in the middle of the highway and along the dash line, and he's not moving. I call to him, no response, he's not moving. And I'm warned not to go out there because I'm wearing a dark blue golf shirt and blue jeans. And it's a moonless night. I didn't see him. No one's going to see me in the middle of the highway. So it's too unsafe for me to go out there. So I stayed where I was. And good thing I did, because it was less than a minute, a mid-sized SUV comes around the curve. And by instincts, human instinct is you never hit something with your tires in the middle of the street, because you could lose control and you could get into an accident. So you do one of two things. You swerve to avoid it, or you swerve to take it between your tires and you just drive over top and like pass underneath the vehicle. I don't know why they chose what they did. They swerved left and took the body between the front tires. And there's no clearance. There's no clearance in a mid-sized SUV for a human body. There just isn't, right? So they took him head first. His head was facing oncoming traffic and went over top of him full highway speed. Didn't even see him, so they didn't even brake. They barely were able to swerve to avoid hitting him with the tires. And when they passed over laws of physics, it took his body, rotated him 180 degrees, launched him 7 feet in the air and 50 feet down the highway, following it behind the vehicle as it was traveling down the highway. Body came down, landed on the concrete, rolled, and stopped across the right-hand lane. The SUV braked for about 3 seconds and hit the gas and left. They panicked. They never stayed. They left. So I'm on my own looking at Okay, now what? I'm in shock at this point because of what I just saw. I hit him, now he got hit again. 911 operator tells me just get back to your vehicle. It's not safe being on the side of the highway because someone's going to try to swerve to avoid him and hit you. So I'm walking back towards my car. He's definitely dead. If my collision didn't kill him, that absolutely would have. So there's no way he's alive at this point. There's nothing I can do for him. So first aid's not going to do any good. So I'm walking back and it's less than a minute. Big sound comes from behind me and lots of lights. It's a semi with a flatbed trailer.
Wow.
And right now the body's across the right-hand lane. There's no way he's going to move in time. I'm waving and yelling and screaming at him to get his attention that there's something in the highway ahead of him, but the body is so close that it didn't make any difference. The driver's side tires of the semi took the body across the pelvis, and yeah, that was collision number 3. So at this point, I get back to my car and wait for the ambulance and police to arrive. He had stopped originally up near my car, so at least he stopped. When I got out of my car to go talk to the paramedics, the EMTs, and the police, he had left. He left as well. He took off, just panicked again. And again, a panic situation, just didn't know what to do. He left. And we've never located him. The police have never heard from either one of the drivers. I was the only one who stopped. So at that point, it's me trying to figure out, now what? I have no car. I'm in the middle of another province and somebody's now dead because of what happened. What do I do? And the panic starts to set in. Am I going to be in trouble? Am I going to get charged with something? Am I going to be charged with vehicular manslaughter because somebody died in a car accident? And that's not uncommon, right? So after a little bit of panic and talking to the police a bit, the corporal that was there, he said, well, no, based on what I've told him, I likely am not going to be charged with anything, but he can't be certain of that until they do their investigation, accident reconstruction, all that sort of stuff, right? I get taken to a hospital because I have a cut on my right hand. When I went to put my car into park, I grabbed the stick shift and I put glass in the middle of my hand and never even felt it. I was bleeding through from a cut on my hand the whole time and I didn't even notice. And paramedics noticed. So they bandaged me up, took me to the hospital, got the glass taken out, gave my statement, and got a hotel room because I'm not going home. So I waited until the next day to talk to the police to find out, okay, so what can you tell me? And he goes, nope, everything you said absolutely checked out. You did absolutely nothing wrong. You're free to go. We're charging you with nothing. No, you're free to go home. And I'm just like, okay, I've got to figure out how to do that. But thanks. That was at least a relief from that perspective. I wasn't going to be in trouble. From there, I got my parents to come and get me. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon by the time they arrived and headed home. Drove back through the accident scene to get back home. Everything was cleaned up, but you can still see some car parts on the side of the highway and sort of thing. No blood or anything. There was no blood visible anywhere, but that helped a bit. But it was hard to drive through there on the way home. My parents were driving. I wasn't going to drive. Finally got my way home and tried to figure out what am I going to do to get better. And I know I'm in trouble. My brain's been working for sort of basically the better part of 12 hours in overdrive, what we call monkey mind, where your brain just goes into overdrive and thinks, it's your reptilian brain trying to rationalize what happened and trying to make sense of it and trying to protect you from it happening again. So everything's a trigger and it's a problem. And it's just, I start trying to figure out what to do next.
Wow. I can only guess, Jacques, you must have thought over and over and over, what if? All types of what if scenarios. What if I'd have been driving slower? What if I would have had high beam lights on? What if? And you end up in that type scenario, maybe blaming yourself. Did that happen?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the what if started shortly after the accident on what if I'd left home sooner? What if I'd stopped to get food? What if I just left in the daytime and driven during the day and not been through there at night? Maybe I would have seen him in time, right? Why didn't I see him quick enough? Start blaming myself for why couldn't have I avoided him? But the laws of physics, it's pretty clear. The human reaction time, I had no chance. There's no way, which is the reason why and the police know that. And they understand it from an accident reconstruction perspective. In the second and a half it would take the human body to recognize what it was I was seeing and react, my car will travel 160 feet. Well, yeah, there's no way. I don't have a chance. Like I'm easily going to hit him. And yeah, I didn't even swerve the steering wheel at all. I never flinched. It just, he was there and I hit him, right? So it's, as we started to dig into it more and more, part of what helped get me through it was the fact of what he was doing immediately before I hit him, which is the cover of my book. I wrote a book on this eventually, and the cover of my book is actually a reconstruction of the last thing I saw before I hit him. He's facing 45 degrees away from me, so he's not facing me, my car in any way. I've never seen his face. He's a 45-degree angle away from me, and he's not pedaling, and he's looking down. So if you're the instinct on human instinct, right? When you're riding a bike, you know something's coming towards you. You want to not get hit. What's the first thing you do? You look to see where it is, and you pedal like hell to get away from it. He did neither one of those two things. He coasted off the side of the road directly into my lane and waited. He was committing suicide.
Oh
And from the
my
evidence that we
goodness.
had from everything is that it was completely an intentional act on his part to be where he was. So for me, it was understanding that and having talked to the police about it and kind of coming to that realization that helped a lot to put my mind at ease that I could not have done anything different that would have stopped the accident from happening. It wasn't my fault, and it never was my fault. This is something he did of his own accord, right? So that helped with the start the healing process, that to stop blaming myself for his death when it wasn't anything to do with me. This was all on him. So that
What was,
started to help.
what was the approximate amount of time from the day or the evening of the accident and the determination of the suicide attempt?
We kind of got an inkling of it that night from the police, because I talked to the corporal, and he said, based on everything I was saying, he's going, that's just no, it's a moonless night. He's got no reflectors. He's got dark clothing on intentionally. He's got a dark navy blue sweater and black sweats on a bike with no reflectors. Moonless night, middle of nowhere with no traffic lights, nothing, no street lights, nothing. He's going, no, this all points to this was intentional. And by the next morning when I talked to him again, he goes, yeah, this kind of leads us to believe that this was not something that you could have ever avoided, because he was there intentionally trying to get hit. And if it wasn't you, it was going to be the SUV after you. If it wasn't him, it's going to be the semi. It was going to be somebody. Somebody was going to hit him. His intent was he was not leaving that highway alive.
So I'm envisioning you went some number of hours, days with the mangled body, mental image of that, and you're going through the what if scenario. And it wasn't until, I mean, nothing is settled. I mean, we believe everyone has value for life. And so I'm guessing, Jacques, you went through some sort of maybe some triggers, some just different things, thinking about the what ifs, the mangled body, and so forth. I'm saying all that to ask you, do you feel that you have it settled even now, or can you get flashbacks every once in a while?
I don't have flashbacks. One of the things that I was doing before the accident happened, a good 10 years before the accident, I started personal development. And I attacked that pretty well because I was in a suicidal state 10 years earlier. So my mental health is something I guard quite well. And I've learned how to deal with a lot of things, but nothing to this extent. This was a total shock. And this is something that went beyond anything I was prepared to handle. But I had some tools. Now I had to learn how to use those tools to try to figure out, how do I reconcile what happened and not have the triggers impact me on a daily basis. Every single day was much the same. My stress level was 6 or 7 out of a scale of 1 to 10. I was a 6 or 7 every day. That knot in the middle of your chest, your sternum, that heavy ball that sits there when you're really stressed, that was nonstop. It never went away. And anytime something happened that was a little bit stressful, would take me to a 10. And my instinct, especially from a men's perspective, I wanted to hide. I wanted to get away from everybody and anything And I wanted to crawl under my blankets in my bed and just get away from it and hide and take away the pain. But the pain never went away. So I needed to find some way of getting that to stop. And that was my first task, is to get help. I called somebody from my health provider on my way home from Manitoba when I was with my parents. And the first response I got was, okay, we'll book you in for next Thursday's our next available appointment. This was a Thursday. They wanted me to wait a week. And I'm like, nah, yeah, no, that doesn't work for me. I can't. I need somebody now. And they said, well, the best we can do is put you on a call list. If somebody's got time, they get done with a client early, they'll call you. If they don't have time, you won't hear from somebody for a few days. So I'm just like, yeah, that's the best I got. Okay, I'll take it. 5 hours later, I get a phone call. Young lady, based on the voice, probably fairly young, female, and acted like a kindergarten teacher. If you know how men would react to somebody being treated like a 5-year-old, yeah, that didn't go very well. I'm explaining my story, and after I'm done talking, she goes, oh, it's all right, you'll be okay. Like you're consoling a 5-year-old child who skinned his knee in the playground. And that wasn't going to go over well, and it didn't go over well. And I basically shut down. I went into my cave and just, yeah, I'm done. I basically stopped talking. She tried to get me to talk a little more, but I was done. And that wasn't what I needed. I needed somebody to help me think it through. Somebody help me talk. Get me to talk about it and don't treat me like a child. So that was a really negative experience. And that conversation lasted 15 minutes. Got off the phone and felt no better than I did before. Felt lost, struggling. I turned to two of the closest people in my life. My best friend and one of my cousins is also one of my best friends. Turned to them for help, but they're not counselors. So all they can do is lend an ear. I need to find a way of getting through the pain and the struggle and getting some help with that. Eventually, the whole reason I was going to Manitoba was for a real estate coach I had hired. I had talked to him after the accident saying I'm not coming because I never made it there. I didn't go. I was a couple hours away yet. Never made it to the city. So he and I chatted, and he has a life coach who said, well, she might be able to help. So I talked to her. She's trained in neuro-linguistic programming, which is a way of using, you know what that is. Yeah, it's just so your listeners who don't know, it's a way of using communication within your own mind, visualization, to come to terms with something that you're struggling with. In my case, it was the accident. And I found a process with her that we used over several sessions to be able to come to terms with what happened and to separate my emotional state with my physical. Because all the triggers, what they were doing was putting me physically and mentally back to the same state I was in when the accident happened. And that had that whole negative reaction. If I could start to separate that and start to come to terms with what happened with the accident and start to really convince my mind that, no, this wasn't my fault, stop blaming myself for it, and start to slowly have that turn around, then the triggers would happen and it would have less of an impact on me physically. I wouldn't constantly be feeling like I'm going to throw up and sick to my stomach all the time and having that knot. Slowly over time, it did help a lot. That helped significantly. And from that point, I kept working on the personal development pieces that I had learned and some new ones that I picked up, and started doing a lot of self-care, because the reality is, with my PTSD or anyone else who's struggling with something from a mental health standpoint, your counseling sessions are once or every week, once every 2 weeks. What do you do the rest of the time? What are you doing to help yourself? The counseling can only be there a certain amount of time before you start to go, okay, I'm starting to collapse again. It could be 2 days in, you got 4 more days to go before you see them again. What do you do? And that's what I was struggling with. So I learned how to use meditation. I learned how to use journaling. I learned how to use breathing techniques, using box breathing to calm down my central nervous system, slow down my mind, calm down my mind, and be able to do those little things a bit at a time. And the more I did them, the better I got at it. So the more I worked on myself, the more I worked on my own mind, the better I got at training myself not to think the way I was thinking. Perspective is really important. I can't live like on a timeline. To the left is all the past and living in that accident. The timeline right in the middle, right where you are, is your current mindfulness piece, being present in your own mind, and then everything to the right is your future state. Too many people get locked up on the left. They get locked up on the past. They get locked up a little bit in the present, go, okay, I'm just stuck here. But they don't try to get forward, don't try to move on from what's happening and looking forward to something. So every single day started the same way. I was in a panic. I'd sleep overnight and would hate myself in the morning because your subconscious mind works on the last thing you thought about. The last 5 minutes before you go to sleep, your subconscious mind takes that and works on it overnight. So I learned to meditate the night before and always use gratitude. You can't be grateful and in a negative state at the same time. So be grateful. Find 5 things about your day you're grateful for and repeat them. Fall asleep to that. Now your brain's not working on all that negative stuff that's been going on. That accident didn't become part of my sleeps. I slept fine. I didn't have nightmares, right? Something that is very common, I didn't. I was able to avoid that by making sure I was using the right attitude before I went to sleep. The next morning, get up, I start to process again. I do my meditation, usually 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on the day. If it's bad, it's a little longer, but then use gratitude in my journal. I write in my journal, today's going to be a great day because fill in the blank. And I start my day on a positive note, always. Avoid the news, avoid social media. None of that existed for me first thing in the morning for at least the first hour. Didn't have any of that. The first hour in the morning was for me to train my mind to get better. And that helped tremendously.
Yeah, I want to ask you what used to be and what is now. As you think back of what used to be and your prognosis of a poor mental state, would you say you were, if not focused, you certainly spent too much time thinking negative? And the turning point is, and I'm a believer, we will find whatever it is we're looking for, negative or positive, but you've made a conscious attempt to start the day positive, gratitude, and so forth. Have I oversimplified it?
Nope, you hit it right on the head. Exactly. Yeah. Get away from the negative thinking. I'm driving, somebody cuts me off in traffic. What's my first instinct? What do people normally do? They flip the bird, they yell, they honk their horn, they scream, they react. As soon as I reacted, my stress level went from a 6 or 7 to a 10. So how do I avoid that? Don't react. How do I know if I put myself in that person's shoes? How do I know what their day is like? Maybe they cut me off because this is a guy driving, he's by himself. His wife just asked him for a divorce. He's not going to lose half of everything. He's going to lose half custody of his kids. And what about his day? How do I know that what he's going through is not worse than what I'm dealing with? So I looked at it from that perspective. I flipped it on its head. Now I just wave. I go, no, it's okay. And I wave. And the reaction you get sometimes is quite comical. Some are like, they're shocked. They're like going, thumbs up. They go, hey, go, thank you. Didn't mean to. Wasn't intentional. We always think it's intentional. We think the negative. We think it as something is an attack on us. It was never an attack on us. It's somebody who's distracted because there's something else going on for them that was more important at that point.
So you credit neuro-linguistic programming for I'm going to say the total transformation of your thought process.
For the start of it, yes. Yeah, that was definitely a starting point. That only lasted 10 sessions. It took about a month and a half or so of constant work with that, going a little bit better than once a week with her. The first little while was like once every 2-3 days because I was pretty bad. And once it started to kick in a bit, then it got better. So we did a little bit longer just to help me transition to not relying on her all the time. So we transitioned it to a little bit longer time frame. But then when I pair that with all the work I was doing with my self-care, put the two together, and I got better very quickly. It took me about 10 months before I finally got to the point where I was willing to talk about the accident more openly. I told very few people for 10 months. Hardly anybody knew. People at work didn't know. My boss knew, a couple of people, that was it. No one knew. I just lived it in my own world. I kept it away from everybody.
Talk to us about self-care And I just have an image of what that is, but is that your self-designed program, or did you have a therapist, coach, someone working with you on that? Talk to us about self-care.
One of the big books that I read was called Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. He was a great help. Like his book was fantastic. And I took what he teaches for a morning process to set your day up right. And I did some modifications to it for my own to make it mine. So he does the journaling, he does some exercise pieces, he does the breathing. Like there's different things that he teaches within his book that I use to modify it for myself so that I could always take control of what my mind is doing and not let my mind control me. Your brain, if you let it go wild, will control what you do. It controls your reactions. It controls your body state. It'll control illness, right? If you let yourself go into a negative state a lot with the way your mind works and always going into the negative all the time, like our news always does these days, that will eventually make you sick. And it's a proven fact in research. If you can use your own mind to keep yourself in a positive state and always be mindful of where you are, mindful of what you're doing and what your brain is doing, and the way that you think, you can heal yourself of lots of stuff. Joe Dispenza is one that I follow online. They've done a ton of brain research on it where you can change your genetics by using your mind. You can change your genes. And it's fact. They've proven it that you can do it. And I've that's part of what my world was with personal development and learning that. And I used a lot of that for myself and just using mindfulness, using my mind, controlling my mind on the way I think every single day. And the more I did it, the better I got at it. And the better I got at it, the faster I got better. And I could actually go into my world and talk about what happened.
Now, let me ask you about the mind control part. Are you at a point in your mental health that you instinctively know, or the still small voice tells you, hey, you're starting on a path of stinking thinking, stop it and get past it? I mean, do you know how to manage? I guess what I'm asking, Jacques, is do you know how to manage negative thinking, or are you totally cured of it?
Yeah, it takes practice to learn how to do that, and you never ever get rid of it entirely because your brain is designed to try to protect you. Your reptilian brain is the caveman brain. It's the one that developed way back millennia ago in our ancestry, that it's designed to protect you. And it's going to always give you stories. It's not used to this whole technology age. It's used to saber-toothed tigers and bears and a cliff and things that are in nature that you're supposed to avoid. But it's now trying to adapt that reptilian brain to technology where it thinks something is a threat when in reality it's not. So the negative thinking tends to come in and start to snowball on you. So understanding what your mind is doing and understanding that, oh, I can see that. Now, thanks for that thought. That's a nice thought, but I don't need that today. No, pass that by. What else do you have for me? It's that mentality where you just control your mind to go, no, that thought doesn't help me. I don't need to think like that because that isn't based on reality. So that can stop, go away. Let's try something else. And you start to take those little things, almost like a cloud that comes in your brain. It's a negative thought. You go, no. You grab the cloud, you push it away. Let's go into something else. Where's the positive piece of my day? What else can I work on to work towards? What's my goal? What's my purpose? What's my why of why I'm on this planet, right? Simon Sinek, Start With Why, another fabulous book really readers can read. What's your why? Why do you do things? Why do you do what you do? If you can figure that out, you're half the way to get into your purpose and really having a purpose in life to really start to drive you to do things.
No, you're exactly right. Jacques, I'm thinking that I want to ask you if you might consider another episode. Now, I know we're recording, and this is our listeners are going to hear whatever you say, but mind control and thinking positive and self-care. And I think a part of this is accepting yourself, actually, maybe in a healthy way, loving yourself. But our listeners need to know more about this because there are some places that believe we're in a worldwide, we're in a mental health crisis. And some people make some fateful decisions, and it may be a matter of just, let's say, developing a relationship with and just listening to a person, and you may help them avoid a fateful decision. I'm just supposing some things that I just said, except to say that would you consider coming back with another episode and talking more about mind control and this self-care?
Absolutely. There's actually more to it than what I said. There's a lot more that I dug into after the accident. It wasn't just the accident itself. I started digging into other pieces of my life that I knew I was struggling with, and I attacked them all. And there's pieces of that that tie into the self-care piece very closely that really made a difference that we haven't even talked about yet. So absolutely, I would come back and have another episode with you anytime.
And I can envision the possibility of multiple episodes, Jacques. What you just said, as we take a reflective look at ourselves, the way we think, I'm just asking you rhetorically at this point, is it necessary, is it helpful to just recount and talk out some of those negative, dirty thoughts? I'm going to use that term very generically. And I believe that's a topic we need to address further, Jacques. And I will tell you, thank you for being very transparent, very honest. You are a great example of what our listeners need to learn from. And Jacques, on behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you for what you've told us so far. We look forward to additional episodes where we can learn more from your life experience.
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. I'd love to help people. That's why I do what I do. That's why I'm trying to use the accent for something good.
I also want to thank you. I'm sitting here and I'm just absorbed in your story and all that you have gone through and how you've come to the other side. That will be so interesting to hear more about the brain, the positive, and the 5 things that you say to yourself of an evening before you go to sleep. So this is great.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you, Jacques. We'll be back with you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and disc personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.